Well, good afternoon. I'd like to start by thanking the NASC and the Access Industry Forum for this opportunity to talk to you today. I hope you can all hear me okay. I'm going to start by looking through some of the key guidance notes that have changed recently from the National Access and Scaffolding Confederation and have a bit of a summary of other guidance that has changed recently. We're going to start with the main talking points in our industry at the moment, which is preventing falls in scaffolding, safety guidance number 4, or SG4, as it's commonly referred to. I think it's important if we understand where SG4 has come from, and as part of that, we look at the requirements of the work at height regs, the last revision in 2005, which saw the requirements to consider collective protection over personal. The work at height regs requires that you avoid work at height wherever possible. Now, by virtue that somebody's decided to employ a scaffolding contractor, normally means that somebody else has made that decision that we're not going to avoid work at height. We have seen some innovative design and planning which has enabled scaffolders to avoid work at height, but that can't be achieved in every scaffolding application. So it brings us to the next stage in the hierarchy: preventing falls, choosing the most suitable method of working and the most suitable equipment to prevent a fall in the first place. If we can't prevent a fall, then we've got to mitigate both the consequences and the distance of a potential fall. But as I said, at all stages, considering collective protection over personal. I like to think of collective protection as passive protection. If you think of a guardrail on a scaffolder's working platform, it sits there all day doing nothing until somebody falls against it. Whereas personal protection, your harness, is active protection. You've physically got to attach it to something for it to afford you any protection. And we know from the HSE's and the NASC statistics that lots of scaffolders are falling with wearing harnesses that weren't used. So looking at the top of our hierarchy again, as I say, we've seen innovative examples of avoiding work at height through good planning and innovative design, such as handrails fixed to structural steelwork or precast concrete sections before they're craned into place. So the handrails are fixed on the ground and they're in place when that element of the structure is craned into place. We've seen large modular sections of scaffolding pre-assembled, sometimes off-site, sometimes on-site, but erected on the ground and then craned into position. So, what sort of success have we had with SG4 over the years? Well, according to NASC accident statistics, falls from a working platform or scaffold has seen a significant reduction since the major revision of SG4 in 2000. In 1999, we had 93 falls from height recorded within the NASC membership. In 2009, that had reduced to 20. That represented a 78% reduction in the actual number of falls and something like an 84% reduction in the accident frequency rate. That's despite an 18.6% increase in the number of operatives working within the NASC membership during that time. So the statistics speak for themselves. More time exposed to risk and less number of incidents. So what are the issues surrounding SG4? Well, the HSE made it clear in 2008 that there were certain elements of the tunnelling principle established in SG4 that they were unhappy with. And this was primarily the unprotected traverse that allowed scaffolders to walk out on an unprotected edge for the length of material that they were guardrailing with. So effectively, a scaffolder could walk out up to 21 feet, and before he puts his hand on his spanner, he would have to clip on. We have to recognise in scaffolding that there is an inherent risk of a fall that can never be completely eliminated. There are certain applications where the primary means of protection will be personal fall protection equipment. Over the edge work such as cantilevers, drop lift scaffolds, suspended scaffolds. Scaffolders required to crab beams, climb along beams, will need to rely wholly on personal fall protection equipment. Within this latest revision, we focused on the creation of the scaffolder's safe zone. Scaffolders are required to focus upon creating the safe zone with a minimum of a fully boarded working platform without gaps where people could fall, and a minimum of a single main guardrail wherever there's a risk of a fall. So here you can see illustrated the scaffolder's working platform with a minimum of a single guardrail, fully boarded, and the requirements of a finished working platform for other trades. Scaffolders are encouraged on finished working platforms to progressively install the double guardrails as they go. There is an exception to the fully boarded requirement, is that if scaffolders are using a conventional carabiner that is required to attach to the ledger below foot level, then they can still omit one board from that fully boarded platform. Those boards can be to one side or centralised to allow access to both ledgers. Some of the principles that existed established in previous versions of SG4 still exist. The requirement for boarding out from below is still there. Also, the requirement of the tunnelling principle to progressively work away from your ladder access and work back to it still exists. Prior to SG4, often the ladder for access and egress for the scaffolders was the last thing that would turn up. We've clarified some of the grey areas that existed within the previous versions of SG4, particularly at what point does the scaffolder become at risk of a fall, and we've specified now that any scaffolder working within a metre of a leading edge needs to be clipped on. Again, some of the good practice established previously in SG4, such as the creation of a safe handling bay with double guardrails that enable scaffolders to receive and walk out material without the need to be clipped on, so the use of double guardrails in these instances. Otherwise, if a scaffolder is reaching below the height of a single guardrail, he needs to be clipped on. So we've clarified working with a single guardrail. So in instances where the scaffolder has to reach below the handrail to fix a brace, to receive material, and so on, they need to be clipped on. Other instances, when raising and lowering platform boards, when working with voids on the inside of the scaffold, such as window openings, other inside gaps between the main platform and the facade, any unprotected stop ends, or gaps within the platform, such as an unprotected ladder trap, scaffolders need to be clipped on when encroaching within a metre of these gaps. One of the unintentional consequences of some of the collective protection featured in SG4 means that scaffolders from time to time will have to top out, or hemp as the term we use in scaffolding, over the top of a handrail. So it introduces additional hazards that employers will have to consider. So what methods for creating the safe zone are available to the scaffolders? Well, first of all, MUPs. MUPs were once seen as a competitor to the scaffolding trade. Now they're seen as a tool of the trade. There are certain scaffolding applications where there are clear advantages from using a MUP to build the scaffold. Suspended scaffolds, as you can see here, and as a minimum requirement, the HSE would expect to see MUPs to be used for edge protection wherever access was possible from the ground. So moving on to collective protection in the form of advanced guardrails. We've divided advanced guardrails into three categories in this revision of SG4. We have advanced guardrail systems, we have advanced guardrail tools, and we have advanced guardrail methods, which I'll explain in the presentation. So proprietary advanced guardrails, they push up the outside. In this case, here's an example of a telescopic system. There are concerns about the use of this system on the inside face where there are protrusions from the scaffold. In this case, a change in the sequence of work can become critical, and the guardrail needs to be pushed up in advance of the lift being formed. An earlier form of the advanced guardrail system, the frame type systems, there's a couple of variants available now that again push up the outside. We've seen the introduction in 2008 of a horizontal proprietary advanced guardrail, best suited for long straight runs, but it can be used on the inside or the outside of the scaffold. Moving on to some of the examples of advanced guardrail tools. We like to think of these as tools for raising the guardrails in advance that you're going to leave behind. Here is a featured advanced guardrail tool, a pivoting version that actually raises up to two 21s at any one time. A new innovation that we featured for the first time in SG4 is a push-up type advanced guardrail tool, a special coupler that fixes to the standards, uses conventional scaffold tubes to form the guardrails, and is moved up into place using a wand or a positioning tool. System scaffold manufacturers are beginning to consider their products and introducing new systems of work, and in this case an example, an advanced guardrail tool for the Hackey system. We were keen in this current economic climate to feature in SG4 some of the improvised methods that utilise standard scaffolding equipment that most scaffolding contractors have in their yard. In this case, an improvised frame system using conventional scaffolding materials. A goalpost is erected on the ground and then fixed to the scaffold and can be raised from the working platform as the work progresses. Another alternative is a horizontal version of an improvised guardrail. A scaffold tube is fixed above the main guardrails and is pushed along horizontally, similar to the proprietary type system. And again, we're seeing proprietary system scaffold manufacturers developing innovative methods of working using standard components within their equipment.